This program is brought to you by the partners of A Rood Awakening International. Help others find truth. Support A Rood Awakening International today.
When Moses went toe-to-toe with the Pharaoh and declared, "Let my people go," it became a prophetic cry of freedom. That prophecy was fulfilled when Yeshua died on our behalf, confronted the enemy in the grave, took his keys, and demanded, "Let my people go." That's the theme for Passover 2021, and you're going to meet our special guest tonight, because it's the end of the sixth day. The sun is set, and this is Shabbat Night Live.
As they take this message out into the world.
Well, Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. Welcome to Shabbat Night Live with Michael Rood and Passover 2021. I'm your host, Scott Laird, and please welcome my co-host, the Chief Operating Officer of A Rood Awakening International, Ted Clayton.
Well, thank you for having me here, Scott. And ladies and gentlemen, it's here. The time has finally come. It's Passover 2021. Let my people go.
Indeed. And now we know it's Passover because we have a brand new calendar. And there you can get it at the bottom of your screen, aroodawakening.tv/new calendar. This is for 2021, 2022, and involves photographs from one of the folks who's our guest for Passover 2021. She's going to be doing a book reading. This is Mary Nell Wyatt Lee, reading from her book, Battle for the Firstborn. And there's so many great photos in that book, Ted, that we decided to have those photos as part of our calendar this year. And it's being shipped out right now as we speak.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a calendar you're not going to want to miss. We have always tried to do something a little bit better every year for a calendar, but the photographs in this year's calendar are simply stunning. You're definitely going to want to get this year's calendar. And Scott, I just wanted to say also that the segment that you just got finished with Chef Rich was fabulous for getting together and making sure that you're prepared for our Seder meal, which is happening later tonight, or later tomorrow night.
Well, that's right. And so bookmark that page, because you're going to want to go back to those recipes with Chef Hall. That was a funny segment, Ted, I have to tell you, behind the scenes. He brought this little mixer that we had there. And if you watched it, you saw it. And if not, go back and watch it, because it's pretty funny. Because you can hear that little mixer dying. He was trying to make the matzah in it, and it slowed down, and it just slowed down. And I think we killed it by the end of it, but it was a hilarious segment, and the stuff tasted as good as it looked. Those lamb chops were so easy, Ted. I've always been afraid to do lamb. I never knew what I'm doing with lamb, but Chef Rich shows how easy it really is. Just a little bit of fresh rosemary and thyme in a pan, sear them on either side. Just a little bit of cooking. Doesn't take long at all. In fact, if you don't even have what you need for Passover yet, you could go out to the store and get it right now, and you could literally cook it as fast as we did on that show, because it only took for the whole thing maybe an hour.
Now, if you missed that particular segment, it is actually here somewhere beside us around on the Passover 2021 page. So don't worry if you didn't get a chance to see Chef Rich preparing what he does with the Seder meal. Don't worry. You'll be able to watch it there. And I also believe, Scott, you do have the recipes to go along with that video, correct?
Yeah, if anyone signs up to PassoverCharlotte.com, just put in your information. Again, Passover is all free. You get all of this for free, including the recipes that we had with Chef Rich Hall. We put them all into a PDF, so you can download the PDF and get all the recipes right there to keep. You can do them for this year, keep them for next year, whatever you like. And also, if you have kids, we have a coloring book that we also like to provide to you. And again, both of these things, both the recipes and the coloring book, are provided when you sign up, because you'll get a confirmation email. And in that email are the links to download both of these things. So it's all right there. And another thing you'll notice in that email is a store discount. It's a special discount code that you'll need to go into our store to save 20% all weekend long. Now, we made it all weekend long because, of course, starting right now is the Shabbat, and a lot of people prefer not to shop on the Shabbat, so we'd like to have you shop afterwards on the Sunday. So it is good all the way through Sunday midnight.
That's right. And ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to want to miss a minute of tomorrow's Passover 2021. Scott, tell us about who's going to be on and what time they can watch.
Okay, so this is all 10 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. it starts Eastern.
Yes.
And so all the times we're going to give you are Eastern times here. So it starts at 10 o'clock.
Yes.
We have a two-part series, as it were, with Nehemiah Gordon and Keith Johnson. And this is Let My People Go, What It Means to Be Grafted In. Now, this is a conversation, Ted, that Nehemiah and Keith, who have done a lot of things together, they told me right before we turned the cameras on that they have never done this conversation together before.
Wow.
About being grafted in, because Keith is a former Methodist pastor and Nehemiah is a Karaite Jew.
Yes.
Who we find very helpful here at Rood Awakening to know the Jewish perspective. And so, but they've never come together on this particular topic. So it actually took, we were planning to do it in 1 hour, it actually took 2.
Well, and also, Nehemiah is considered by Michael to be one of the greatest biblical scholars of our time. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to want to miss either one of these segments with Nehemiah and Keith. Segment 1, once again, starts at 10 a.m. Segment 2 starts at 11 a.m. And then we have a little break for lunch. And then, Scott, what do we have on at 1 p.m.?
Well, then Nehemiah comes back alone with us for another interview, but this is not about the previous topic. What this is about is with a couple named Pamela and Quentin Burt.
Yes.
And Quentin served some time for a mistake he made when he was a teenager. And he served a very heavy sentence for what he did. And it was, those kind of sentences are not handed out anymore.
Right.
But he served all of that time. He got out a little bit early, though, because of COVID. And they'll explain that situation there.
Right.
And long story short, that Pamela and he had dated in high school, went their separate ways, obviously, while he was incarcerated, and they actually got back together. And there is an amazing moment when he came out of prison for the very last time, and he says, "Thank Yehovah." And that caught Nehemiah's attention.
Yes.
And so Nehemiah brought them to us, and there's a wonderful conversation that we're going to have with them today as well.
So now at 2 o'clock today, you'll be able to see, I believe it's Mary Nell Wyatt Lee. And she has a very interesting new book out right now.
She does, and that book is where we got all the photos for the calendar that we just spoke about. And her book is called Battle for the Firstborn, in which, long story short, she reveals that King Tut, the most famous ancient Egyptian that the whole world knows, the golden mask, all that kind of thing. It's actually, he's standing right behind us.
That's right.
That he was actually the Pharaoh's firstborn that died during the Exodus.
Wow.
Because they find out that his mask is not his face. We see from other depictions and other statues in Egypt that it is his father's face.
Oh my.
So what happened was King Tut died in the 10th plague.
Yes.
Father gets angry, chases after the Israelites. He dies as well. Boy is thrown into dad's coffin because they don't need it anymore because he's in the Red Sea.
That's right.
And it turns out that the body in the coffin is King Tut, but the face is actually that of his father on the golden mask.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now at I believe 3 o'clock. We have Tim Mahoney, and Tim is going to be talking about his new movies that are coming out, but also a very special offer that you can receive his box set with. So you want to stay around for that. And then at 4 o'clock, we have the biggie.
Yes.
We have the preview of the Chronological Gospels, Season 3, and only you will be able to see it here at Passover 2021.
Indeed, the world premiere, as it were, of this series. And this is just the pilot. There are many more episodes to come. Our crew is working on them right now. It's an amazing thing. And now, of course, after that, we have a little bit of a break for Passover prep. And in fact, like I said before, these recipes that we have from Chef Rich Hall are so simple that you could do them in that break. You could do them in that break if you haven't prepared anything for Passover. You can still make it happen and still join us at 7 o'clock for the best of the best Passover Seder, as we're calling it, from Michael Rood. This was recorded a few years ago. This was Michael's best storytelling ever. There's a hilarious segment in there with Nehemiah Gordon.
Yes.
And just a wonderful set. This is just a beautiful storytelling by Michael. And so that is coming up as well.
So, ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere because Scott is going to be coming up with our first interview of the evening in just a moment with Nehemiah Gordon. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Did Ron Wyatt really find the Ark of the Covenant in a cave beneath Golgotha? Kevin Fisher presents breathtaking evidence that brings this incredible claim to life.
These two items are going to come out one day, the 10 Commandment stones that God wrote as a testimony to the world, and the 8mm videotape. And Ron Wyatt, his finding the Ark of the Covenant will be confirmed through that videotape.
It was only then that I took time to carefully examine the rest of the chamber.
The Cave of the Covenant with Kevin Fisher will take you back in time to amazing events that led to the world's most important and disputed archaeological find of all time. But the only way to watch it is to receive it as our gift. Donate a $50 love gift and we'll send you The Cave of the Covenant on DVD or Blu-ray. Or for a donation of $100, we'll send you The Cave of the Covenant, plus a Passover meal prep kit, including a Passover-themed pot holder, oven mitt, and soft-sided foldable matzah basket. Or as a special offer, for a donation of $300, we'll send you The Cave of the Covenant, the Passover meal prep kit, and a pair of elegant glass candlesticks with the words Shabbat Shalom etched in Hebrew. These gifts are available only in March, and supplies are limited. Make your donation today and receive the $50 gift, the $100 gift, or the $300 gift. Remember, this offer ends March 31st and supplies are limited. Call now to receive your gifts. 888-766-3610. That's 888-766-3610. Or get your gifts online at monthlylovegift.com.
Yes, it's Passover. Welcome. The theme this year is Let My People Go. Of course, the famous words from Moses to the Pharaoh, and of course from Yeshua to the adversary after he'd been crucified, went to Hades, grabbed the keys and said, let my people go. That's what this is all about, correlating those two things. I want to welcome some very special guests this year. You'll see them tomorrow in much detail. We're doing actually 3 episodes with these guys. Nehemiah Gordon, Keith Johnson, welcome to Passover 2021. And we keyed in especially on Let My People Go this year. What do we mean by let my people? Who are the people?
Yeah, so one of the things we talked about, I'm really excited here, what we're going to teach tomorrow is about this whole idea of being grafted in. Keith had asked me the question, what is the common ground that I would have as a modern-day Jew, a modern-day biblical Jew, dealing with, in comparison to a believer in the first century, and my immediate response was being grafted in. Right? The Passover is the way that from the very beginning, from in Exodus, we'll teach on tomorrow, about how you get grafted into the Commonwealth of Israel. That's not just something Paul taught, that's something that actually appears in the Torah itself, and is something that's fleshed out throughout the Tanakh.
Now, something that we had discovered when we were talking about this title, Keith, you had mentioned, I think it was first, that you and Nehemiah have never discussed this before. This grafting in.
And actually, this is the way it works with us for all these some 20 years. Is we really do take this sort of thing seriously, and we pray about it, and we battle back and forth. And he was thinking one thing, I was thinking something else. But this question really just took us into a place that I've never been. I think as people are thinking about coming and listening during this time of Passover, this is going to be. I think it's really eye-opening. I want to say something. This is what I love about this. We have a lot of people, they have their English Bible. I've got my English Bible here. I've got my Tanakh here, my Hebrew Bible. And when I look at these together, I find out some really amazing things. Just one, can I give you just one right now? We say, let my people go. When I open the Hebrew Bible, I find this verbal PL that has to do with the word shalach, which means to, Nehemiah, help me? Send away.
Shalach.
So, I mean, it's going to be really fun tomorrow. I'm looking forward to being able to share with you guys. And it just thanks to Michael, thanks to Rood Awakening for putting this on, because I think people during this time have a rare opportunity to get involved in language, history, and context and understand it for themselves.
Indeed.
Yeah, and just to give a little taste of what we're going to talk about, Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. This is God's original promise to Abram before he's even Abraham. He's still Abram, and he's just been called out from the birthplace that he came from, right? And as he's passing over the Euphrates, God says, and in you will be blessed all the families of the earth. And the way the ancient rabbis interpreted that verse based on the Hebrew is, and in you will be grafted all the families of the earth.
Amen.
We'll explain how that came about. That's a very exciting idea, that the way that the nations of the earth are blessed is by being grafted into this tree of Abraham, that being grafted into God's covenant. That was the intention from the very beginning.
That is crazy. And as you mentioned, see, I don't know how many Christians would key in on this, is that the term of being grafted in, everybody thinks, oh, Jew and Gentile, Paul brought this out. Of course, yeah, he's the Jew bringing it to the Gentiles. Now I get it. But this starts way back in, like you said, Genesis.
So the way a lot of Christians, in my experience, understand it is that, well, Jews are this, they're a race, they're an ethnic group. And they're entirely, and they are, it's true, Jews are an ethnic group, but it's not entirely, it's a unique thing in history, because it's a unique thing in the world, really. The Jews are an ethnic group, but not one that's entirely biological. In other words, it's not just DNA that makes you an Israelite. From the very beginning, we have a mixed multitude that came out of Egypt, and that mixed multitude were Gentiles who became part of that covenant. At Mount Sinai, they stood along with all the other Israelites, and they were part of that covenant. And there's really an incredible parallel between the American experience and the experience of Israel, and that American experience is unique in the world. Look at other worlds around the world, other countries around the world. There are countries around the world where to be part of that country, to be really one of the people, you have to be part of the ethnic group that makes up that nation state. And what's unique about America is you can be, it doesn't matter what country you came from, when you came here, the forefathers that established this country, the founding fathers, are your founding fathers. I grew up in a Jewish school where everybody was Jewish, didn't have a single kid in the class who had ancestors in 1776 in the Western Hemisphere. But when we learned the Gettysburg Address about how our fathers, 7 years ago, our fathers set forth to establish, I'm paraphrasing it, a country based on this idea, all men are created equal. It was our fathers. It wasn't their fathers, those white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. We weren't here. We were in Eastern Europe and Iraq and wherever the Jews in my class came from. No, it was our fathers. We became part of America, and they were now our fathers as if they were physically in our DNA. And that is what it means to be grafted into Israel. It's an incredible parallel that you're grafted into Israel. And when you're grafted into Israel, you are now, Abraham is your father. That's actually a really interesting thing. Historically, Gentiles who in the Middle Ages, if they said, I'm going to be a Jew, I'm going to become part of Israel, and they would convert, they took on the name of son of Abraham. Right? So that was the classic thing, that if you ever see someone in history and his name is, Shimon ben Avraham, then he's probably somebody who was a Gentile who became an Israelite, because now he's a son of Abraham. Abraham is his father as if he's physically his father. And that is the beautiful and unique experience of being grafted into Israel. It's in Exodus 12. We'll talk about that tomorrow. It's very exciting stuff, and how it ties into prophecies in Isaiah and in Ruth, and all of that is part of becoming the commonwealth of Israel, being grafted into Israel, accepting the God of Israel and the people of Israel as your own. Isaiah says to the Gentile who joins himself to Yehovah, he must not say, surely Yehovah has separated me from his people. Because in his heart, a lot of Gentiles say, well, I'm not really part of God's people. I'm not really part of that people. I'm only spiritually part of that people. I'm not really an Israelite. I'm not really one of those children of Israel. You're part of the commonwealth of Israel, the congregation of Israel, if you accept the God of Israel and the people of Israel. That's not something Paul made up. That's right there from the very beginning.
Indeed. And we only have a minute left, but I wanted to bring this out. Keith, go ahead, Keith. What were you going to say?
No. First of all, people have to understand, tomorrow they're going to get to hear that Scott's actually got some lineage for people who know about grafting, his grandfather. But I want to say something. The first time that this was said from Moses, to let my people go or send away my people, what was the reason? What was the purpose? Yehovah said, send them away that they might have a hag, that they might be able to do this feast with me in the desert. So, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be celebrating Passover together. And I tell you what, you two have just changed the game for me. I'm excited.
Well, there you have it from Keith Johnson, Nehemiah Gordon. Join these guys tomorrow for 3 sessions for Passover 2021, and we'll be right back with our next guest. Stay with us. And welcome back to the Passover 2021 edition of Shabbat Night Live. Our next guest is one of my favorite people of all time because of the new book that she just wrote here. Well, not because of the book, because she's one of my favorite people in the first place, but she wrote one of my greatest books I have in my collection at home. In fact, it's on my coffee table right now. This is a copy we have here at the office. It is Battle for the Firstborn by Mary Nell Wyatt Lee. Mary Nell, welcome to Shabbat Night Live and to Passover 2021.
Oh, thank you, Scott. My goodness, what an intro.
You know what? I'm serious. I have been fascinated by Egyptology since I was a kid. I grew up in Vancouver, Canada. One of the first things I can remember about my love for Egyptology was Expo 86, the World Exposition that makes its rounds to different cities every couple of years. In 1986, it came to Vancouver, and I wanted to go. I was a 14-year-old kid, and they brought an exposition of Ramesses II, from the Egyptology or the Egypt pavilion. Each country had a pavilion. And so I went to see the Egypt pavilion, and I had posters of Ramesses II on my bedroom walls. I started getting interested in all of this. At that time, of course, Indiana Jones was a hot movie. Saw that. I began to hear inklings of Ron Wyatt, and I knew about this guy back then. And then I didn't pay much attention for many years, but now, of course, working with the Rood Awakening International, came back to all that. So I have been in love with your work and that of the late great Ron Wyatt for many, many years. So thank you for writing this book. This is a thrill to me. I love Egyptology. I'm just an Egyptology geek. So I love this book. And we're going to be talking about this book at Passover. Tomorrow afternoon, we have an interview with you all about this book. And I don't want to give it all away, but what I want to do is ask, how did this start for you? This has been a book in the making for many, many years, has it not?
Yes. I married Ron Wyatt in 1988. And the whole idea of our marriage was, he told me, I need help. And I said, okay. And he said, your first assignment is this. And he had, before he ever began his overseas work, he spent a lot of time in libraries reading ancient history because something just drew him to it. It's like God has a time for certain truths to come out. And I believe that this was the time. Then he gave it to Ron, and Ron had to work a lot. I mean, to make the money to do his work, he worked a lot. And he said, I need for you to take this information that I'm giving you of who the Pharaoh of the Exodus was, who was Pharaoh's daughter, who was Moses, all of these things, the whole shebang. He said, I need this documented. And he couldn't do it. So he needed me to do that. And I began work right away. And then right after that, I became totally obsessed like you were. It seems like the first couple of years I spent my life in libraries and museums all over the world, everywhere I could go to, from the British Museum, the Cairo Museum, And then in the United States, there's a lot of museums here that have Egyptian artifacts. I just did all this research, but it was such a complicated subject that until COVID came along and virtually locked me in the house, that I began the task. And it was difficult to get it all written in a manner that people could understand. And the main reason is because Egyptologists, archaeologists, everybody, it's a unwritten rule that whoever makes the discoveries gets to say what it means. So when certain things were discovered, and certain ideas about who this Egyptian king was and who this was, it was pretty much set in stone. And I had to go back and dig out original excavation reports, all of the original work that was done to get just the facts, because everything that is out there now is presenting as fact that this man was this man's father and this was his mother, and when that's not the way it is. And so when I say that, it sounds like I'm being maybe a bit capricious and thinking that I know more than anybody else, and I don't mean that. I want to say up front that I could have not have done any of this if it were not first for all of the work of the archaeologists and the scholars, and then for the work that God gave, the knowledge that God gave to Ron. But it took me 32 years, but I finally got it together because Ron wanted it shared with people.
You know, when folks refer to doctors, performing miracles on the operating table, a smart doctor will say, well, it was only thanks to the great physician. They recognize that their abilities come from God. And I think that we could call God the great archaeologist as well. And he knows, and it's just because things were set in stone, I was going to say quite literally, you broke that mold, so to speak, but only through the work of the great archaeologist in heaven, who revealed things to Ron. Ron passed them on to you, and as a result of a plague, go figure. I'm speaking of COVID, that you were able to create the book that is based on the plague, the resulting death of the firstborn, the crossing of the Red Sea, the Egyptians, the Israelites, the whole package all came together, again, because you were stuck in the home because of a plague. How about that?
On an interesting thing that I will share with you is the people that know me, my family and friends that helped me with the book, and Randall, I struggled with a title. I didn't know what to name this book. And after getting on my knees and praying, you've got to help me, Lord, the title came. And that was, I have no qualms about saying that this was God's gift to me, was the title for the book.
Wow. It's an amazing book. Like I said, I have it at home. This is no wonder it took you 32 years to put it together. I have read through this thing. There's so many confusing things about Egyptology that we will get into tomorrow. And I encourage you to watch Passover 2021 tomorrow. Free to watch online, of course. And we want you to see all the work that went into this and who is who and why Egyptology is wrong and why Mary Nell had to break the mold. It's an amazing story. But at the outset, Mary Nell, I know that you say that this is just a joy to put together for you and you don't want anything for it. But I want you to get something for this. You have donated all of the pictures in this book for our calendar. First of all, we want to say thank you very much for that. And as a response to that, I want to say, folks, if you want to get this book, it is an amazing read. Put it on your coffee table like I have. Just go to ronwyatt.com. You'll see the information at the bottom of your screen there. ronwyatt.com. Get the book from Mary Nell. Support the work that she and her husband Randall are doing. And again, watch Passover 2021 tomorrow. Thank you, Mary Nell. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Scott. It's been a real pleasure.
All right. Well, we'll see more of this information tomorrow. And until then, we'll be back with our next guest for Passover 2021.
The Chronological Gospels Bible is changing lives all over the world. putting everything the Messiah did in exact chronological order and explaining the behind-the-scenes truth of what the Messiah did, when he did it, and why. The timing of it all means everything. And now, the Chronological Gospels can be easier on your eyes. The larger print edition features 40% larger type, and every page appears exactly the same as the original, so you can follow along with others who have the regular size version. The Chronological Gospels larger print edition also has wider margins to write notes, and the premium quality paper means you can highlight without soaking through. Plus, the larger print edition lies flat, so you can teach without having to hold the book open. The Chronological Gospels larger print edition is a big and beautiful coffee table book, measuring a full 12 inches tall and 9 inches wide. Study the Bible with clarity and ease.
I love the size of this book. This is 9 by 12. The paper is perfect because it doesn't bleed through when I write on it. I can mark it up, and I always make notes in all my Bibles. Everything is the same place as it is on the smaller version, and I can just stand back and I can teach from it, and it's the perfect size. I pray thee, of whom speaks this prophet?
Order the Chronological Gospels larger print edition by phone or online. You'll get 40% larger type than the original. Call 800-788-7887. That's 800-788-7887. Or get the Chronological Gospels Bible larger print edition online at aroodawakening.tv/large.
And welcome back to the Passover 2021 edition of Shabbat Night Live. Our next guest is one who creates documentary films that make you go, aha, I knew it. I knew it was true. And it all started with the Patterns of Evidence, Exodus. Then it went to the Moses controversy. Did Moses actually write the Bible? Well, yes, of course he did, but here's the proof that he did. And then there was the Red Sea miracle, parts 1 and 2. People have different perspectives of the Red Sea miracle. There's the Egyptian perspective right here and the Hebrew perspective. And we can all thank Tim Mahoney for these documentary films. Tim, welcome to Shabbat Night Live.
Well, thank you for having me, Scott.
We can't wait for your session tomorrow because as we've talked about already before the cameras came on, you have more material coming up. I had asked you if the COVID-19 pandemic had actually affected your ability to go around and get footage, and you said, no, we've already had it in the can. I'm just basically editing it together, and you have more than enough. So what's coming next from your studios?
Right. We've been filming, for 20 years. So we had literally thousands of hours, because when I'll go to an area, I'll film different time periods of history. So if I'm at a particular part in Israel, I'll sometimes look at, the time when Abraham was there, and then the time when Jacob and his family were there, and then I'll come back to the time when David was there, or, because I'm there, and the different historical events happen at those places. So then I would take that footage back and we catalog it. And we do have this next film coming out. And just as we had the Red Sea Miracle 1 and 2, we're trying to connect these two films, the next two films called Journey to Mount Sinai and Mountain of God. And it's going to pick up where the Red Sea Miracle left off, at the sea. Now, the Egyptians have been drowned, and the Israelites now are leaving and heading on their journey to Mount Sinai. And like all of our films and Patterns of Evidence, we're going to look at different viewpoints and look at different places. So some people who think that they crossed up near Egypt, we're going to look at the route down to the traditional Mount Sinai or to a location called Har Karkum. We're also going to look at Jebel Lawz and look at some of the other mountains in Saudi Arabia that are being proposed. And so that's going to be the focus of the Journey to Mount Sinai. And then we're going to ask the question, what type of evidence would you find according to the biblical account? And can we see evidence for that at these different locations and somewhat, bring that out? That's what we're going to basically be doing in that first film. But the second film then is really what happened at that mountain that significantly changed the world. And, we talked about what's happening in our culture today. You go ahead, Scott, and you can just, share a little bit about that, because we were talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was just going to bring that up. I know you're going to bring up the fact that, yes, just like the Israelites were being canceled by Pharaoh, it's threatening the ability of archaeologists now to do their digs and things like this. And they're coming up against a lot of scrutiny and just roadblocks where you wouldn't think they would come from. And so now you are trying to help out by doing something. Can you tell us about what you're doing?
Yes, we are. And we started this last year in the midst of all this COVID stuff. We also started a foundation called Patterns of Evidence Foundation, and that then grew something called the Historical Faith Society. It seemed like there's a lot of people that were very frustrated, and they wanted to do something. They wanted to be a part of something, and so we created the Historical Faith Society, and you can learn about it at historicalfaithsociety.com. But each month we have a focus. And this current month that we're looking at, we've been focusing on the Dead Sea Scrolls, the hidden caves of the Dead Sea Scrolls with Dr. Randall Price. And so the mission behind the Historical Faith Society is to preserve and present and pass on the biblical faith. And so preserving it, we started to see would be the idea of helping these archaeologists raise some money so that they can afford to dig. And it's exciting is that these Dead Sea Scroll caves, there's many of them on the hillside that have collapsed. And they believe, what they're seeing is that they believe there could be more scrolls hidden in these collapsed caves. And that's what we're getting behind with the Historical Faith Society, which we're really, really excited about.
So we're talking about more of the same here, of the scrolls just sitting in a jar, crushed under a collapsed cave. Is that right?
Right. And there's chambers that go way back in some of these caves. So some of the openings have collapsed, but what they're trying to do is they've got a pretty good idea that some of these caves possibly still have uncollapsed jars where they can find the manuscripts. And that's what we're excited to find.
Now, I know that you had talked about before, you thought that the patterns of Exodus was about Egypt, but then it really became about something else for you. What was that, and how did that happen?
Right. Well, Patterns of Evidence, I was so focused on Egypt for 5 or 6 years, and then all of a sudden we realized that the Exodus isn't about Egypt. It happens in Egypt, but these people are heading to the Promised Land. And that's when we decided that we needed to go to Israel. And I said, can I talk to the leaders of your nation? And I was just, a filmmaker. And I said, but I want to talk to Benjamin Netanyahu, Shimon Peres, the president. I want to talk to.
Did you think that would actually? Did you think it would actually happen when you asked the question?
I didn't know, but I sometimes look back and go, how did I have the nerve to do that? But you know what? I got those interviews, and we're going to show some clips coming up here. My plan for the Passover event is to show clips from our different films and then talk about them and the significance of these clips to the Passover. So we're going to basically re-celebrate different portions of the Passover by looking at what does the Passover mean, its historical significance, the significance of Moses and his ability to write. And we're also going to look at the judgment of Egypt, the evidence for that. And in each case, these Patterns of Evidence films, I hope that they will be encouragement to your audience during this Passover time.
And we have all 4 of these movies ready to go. Here's some copies right here in front of me. So Tim, we're going to ask people to follow the information on the bottom of their screen to get these from you. But this is not the end of it. Like we said, you're already working on 2 other films, in addition to some, what would we call it? Bonus material or a director's cut. What do you have planned for this extra material?
Yes. Well, whenever you work on a film, we have thousands of hours, and you're trying to say, well, what am I going to do with all this? People haven't seen these great interviews. So we've cut it into 4 feature collector box editions for each film, one for each film, and it's about 8 hours per collection. So 8 additional hours in the collection around the subject matter. So that's actually a total of 32 hours of bonus material that these films now that we'll have to offer.
All right, and that's coming soon, I'm assuming, right? As soon as we
know.
Right.
We've got 3 of them done, and the 4th one's on the way.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. And so that's what you're in store for tomorrow with Passover 2021. Look on your schedule. You'll find where Tim's interview is, and you'll see all of these clips as he's just said. So we'll see you tomorrow for Passover 2021, and join us then. And we'll be back with our next session right after this.
Did Ron Wyatt really find the Ark of the Covenant in a cave beneath Golgotha? Kevin Fisher presents breathtaking new evidence.
These 2 items are going to come out one day, the 10 Commandment stones that God wrote as a testimony to the world, and the 8mm videotape. And Ron Wyatt, his finding the Ark of the Covenant will be confirmed through that videotape.
It's only then that I carefully examine the rest of the chamber.
The Cave of the Covenant with Kevin Fisher explores the most debated archaeological find of all time. But the only way to watch it is to receive it as our gift. Donate a $50 love gift and we'll send you The Cave of the Covenant on DVD or Blu-ray. Or donate $100 to receive the teaching plus a Passover-themed oven mitt, pot holder, and matzah basket. Or donate $300 to receive everything plus a pair of elegant glass candlesticks with Shabbat Shalom etched in Hebrew. Hurry, offer ends March 31st. Call the number on your screen or get your gifts online at monthlylovegift.com.
You know, Ted, Michael Rood is a movie buff.
Yes, he is.
He's the first to tell us that, and as such, Michael had an issue with the Bible. He read it, but, he saw the movie playing in his mind.
Yes.
The only issue was that the gospel accounts were not in order, so he found that kind of difficult to follow. So he started putting things in order. Way back, starting in his teenage days, he started doing that. And then officially, as time went on, he did more and more of that. And lo and behold, 40 years later, with all kinds of help from other folks and input, we have now the Chronological Gospels Bible with all of Yeshua's more than 300 events in his life in chronological order. So now it literally is like reading the script to a movie of Yeshua's life and times. And so that's where Michael came up with the original idea for the Chronological Gospels. And now it's being translated into Russian, German, French, Spanish, Chinese. It's all over the world, and I think Polish is coming up now.
That's
as well.
right. That's right.
Crazy, just absolute phenomenal success with it.
And if I could, I'd like to give a big shout out to Pamela Letzker for heading up our translations of the Chronological Gospel. She's done an incredible job, along with our entire international team, headed up by Anna Lil Rood. That last name may sound familiar to you, but Anna Lil has done a spectacular job of making sure that this teaching gets out to the world. And this is spectacular. So, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow, not only are you going to get all the wonderful teachings at Passover 2021, Let My People Go, from Nehemiah Gordon, from Keith Johnson, Mary Nell Wyatt Lee, Tim Mahoney. But also, you're going to get a special preview of the Chronological Gospels Season 3. And folks, let me tell you, this is one of Michael Rood's best works. And it is just going to astound you at how good this season is going to be.
Indeed. And it all started with Chronological Gospel Season 1, and then we went to Season 2.
Yes.
Season 1 was when we went to Israel and had all kinds of issues there, which is pretty funny, a lot of what happened.
And we're going to talk about those here in a little bit.
Yes. So, and then we came to Season 2, which was all about the Revelation, and we did that at Jekyll Island, Jekyll Island, Georgia.
That's right.
Which was it was our version of the island of Patmos.
That's right. And Scott, you have some funny stories about Season 1 that you could share with us right now. So go ahead and share some of those stories.
Now, these come from someone who was actually there. This is not my experience. I did not go. I was not part of the crew. We had 3 members of our crew go there with Michael, one of whom is Stephanie. Stephanie is the director behind Shabbat Night Live.
That's right.
And she wrote down some of her personal memories from that trip, some of which were just hilarious. Some of them here, well, funny now that you think about it, but not funny when they happen.
That's right.
So, for example, after a 12-hour flight, they flew to Tel Aviv. None of the production crew had their gear or their personal luggage.
They lost it.
They lost it. And in fact, some of the equipment for the shoot got shipped back to Charlotte.
That's right. That's right.
So they didn't have that. And then if that wasn't enough, they had 4 days of a sandstorm from Syria and Iraq that brought record heat And nothing like that had happened in Israel in 74 years.
And this was so epic. It was like 10 Commandments, Cecil B. DeMille epic. And that's how hot it was.
And Michael took us to pick up dates and mangoes right from the trees. And if you ever had a fresh date from a tree, it's like eating a fruit with honey inside. Wow. It's just a beautiful thing. A crew member actually had a bad reaction to the mangoes, and then Michael took us off-roading in his seatbeltless Jeep. And I remember seeing the video from that, and they looked like they were trying to have fun, but they're hanging on for dear life.
If you have ever ridden anywhere with Michael Rood, you know you'll be having a death grip on anything, and especially if your vehicle doesn't have seatbelts.
Yeah, now speaking of vehicles, there was another vehicle, there were many car troubles, she says. And then there was this one time when there was a security guard who was Michael had rented a van along with and brought along one of his friends who was helping and also being the security guard for the trip.
Yeah.
He accidentally put diesel into a gas van.
Oops.
So minutes later, the van just stopped, she says, and they waited hours for a tow truck. And so they lost another day of shooting as a result.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you that shooting the chronological Gospels is no simple feat. And also going to Jekyll Island and shooting, the one thing that all the crew talked about more than anything else was, I got this call saying, how do you get rid of sand fleas? Because the entire time they were on Jekyll Island shooting, there was sand fleas everywhere and they were being eaten alive by them. So the crew really did sacrifice a lot to be able to bring you the Chronological Gospel Season 3. But ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you, Season 2 rather, but Season 3, I can tell you without a doubt, is going to be one of the best seasons we've ever had.
And in fact, Ted, we have a promotional clip for it. So let's take a look.
Yeah.
I went out into a wheat field near our house, and I was preaching the Sermon on the Mount to thousands and thousands of heads of grain. And as I was going through the Sermon on the Mount, I was putting Yeshua's words, Jesus' words, into my own words because I needed to understand it. I needed to be able to grasp it and then communicate it in the language of my day. And when I came to the phrase, the gospel of the kingdom, I froze. I realized that after 17 years in church, I had no idea what the gospel of the kingdom was. I know that the disciples, 9 months before the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, that they were out preaching the gospel of the kingdom. They were healing lepers, they were raising dead, they were doing miracles, and they knew nothing about the death, burial, and resurrection. But I was thinking that that was the gospel of the kingdom. Well, I was in for a rude awakening, because as I began to dig into this, it took me on a journey that I could never have anticipated. That journey took me to the land of Israel, where I've made my home for the last 20 years. Standing in my living room in Jerusalem with a group of people, I said, I now know that I am beginning to understand the gospel of the kingdom. Beginning to understand. I was more than 50 years of age, and I'm finally now beginning to understand the gospel of the kingdom. And that is what I'm going to present to you. I'm not going to read Bible verses to you. I am going to tell you the stories. I want to give you a 50-year shortcut through the land of Israel, because this is the gospel of the kingdom.
All right, well, there you have it. Chronological Gospel, Season 3, more to come.
That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to want to miss one single minute. Starting tomorrow morning with Nehemiah Gordon and Keith Johnson and our friend Scott Laird. Starting out doing a wonderful teaching at 10 and 11. Then we break for lunch. Come back at 1, and Nehemiah has a special guest. I believe it's the Burts that are going to be with us. Then Mary Nell Wyatt Lee at 2, Tim Mahoney at 3, and at 4 o'clock, this very special preview of the Chronological Gospel Season 3. Ladies and gentlemen, you are not going to want to miss it. And at 7 p.m., the Seder with Michael Rood. So do everything you can. Where can you go to get online to see this, Scott?
Just go to PassoverCharlotte.com if you haven't already. Pass that along to friends and they can sign up for free. Passover is 100% free this year.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you there tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock for Passover 2021, Let My People Go.
Shalom, Torah fans. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with a friend. Tap the subscription button and the bell icon. And I promise to update weekly with in-depth biblical research. Be sure to download the new michaelrood.tv app for both mobile and home devices for even more commercial-free content.